Now, my main takeaway from this is that even though the national savings rate in the US is abysmal, it's sitting at about 4%, millennials are still able to create huge wealth for themselves using these 6 somewhat unorthodox and novel methods. How are you guys doing today? My name is Apple Kreider, and I have made over 150 daily personal finance and entrepreneurship related YouTube videos here on YouTube, given lectures for hundreds of college students on personal finance, and host a weekly podcast called Young Smart Money. Today, we're going to be talking about the 6 most bizarre and unorthodox money habits that are making millennials rich today. I want to share that with you guys. Let's get into it. All right, so number 1 is rounding up their balances. So one thing I like to say is that millennials are the Instagram generation, where everything needs to look perfect, everything needs to fit in straight lines, everything needs to look good, and this definitely applies to their finances as well. So what I see a lot of my peers doing, and I'm sort of tempted to do this at times as well, is when their investment accounts, when their savings accounts are on uneven numbers, not on round numbers. So say your balance is $141.53. Some people, a lot of millennials, are tempted to round that up. So they'll just throw in the extra $8 and odd cents to round that up to $150. Now, I know among my peers this is true, and my peers will like freak out if their balances are on odd numbers, but there have actually been studies done that show this is actually a habit that is contributing to the savings rate of millennials, and I think that's just absurd, but it is definitely an effective strategy if you're always tempted to round up your balances every time you're on an odd number or on some odd cents, to just round that up. I think that's a great strategy to ensure that you're always contributing, even if it's just a little bit, to your account every single day, week, month, whatever it may be. Number 2, it's not directly a financial habit, but it is a habit that is helping people out financially as young people, and that is wearing the same thing. Now, not the exact same clothes, because we got some BO issues there, but what you have to realize is that deciding what you want to wear every single day takes a certain amount of decision-making power. And how your decision-making really works is you have a certain amount of, some people call it willpower, some people call it like decision-making juice, whatever you want to call it. You have a certain amount of decision-making power that you can use up throughout the day. And if you use that early on in the day, then throughout the end of the day, you're gonna be left with a lot less power to make good decisions. You're gonna end up making poor decisions, and that can become in money, in what you eat, all of these things. But you have a certain amount of decision-making juice, and you can use that up however you want throughout the day. Now, if you decide what you wanna wear ahead of time, if you just have the same thing every single day, or a very similar thing every single day, that can really reduce the amount of decision-making power that you need to allocate to this decision of what you want to wear, that, in my personal opinion, is pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And if you could devote some of that decision-making power to other more important things, possibly your finances or something else that's really going to better your life, then I think that really does make sense to do that. If you can save this decision-making power for the important stuff and just sort of streamline the stuff that's going to happen early on in the day that isn't very relevant, isn't very effective in the grand scheme of things. All right, number 3 is asking for raises. So nearly 50% of millennials have asked for a raise in the last 2 years, and I think this is fantastic. Like, millennials are not afraid to go up to their boss and say, hey, I've been working here for whatever, a year, 6 months, 18 months, and I think that I deserve a higher pay, because obviously standards of living are rising. The cost of living in some of these big cities, San Francisco, LA, New York, it's ridiculous. So millennials are not afraid to say, hey, I need a raise. I've been working here for a long time. I've been putting in good work, and I need a raise. And this 50% of millennials who have asked for a raise in the last 2 years, that's compared to 1/3 of both their parents and their grandparents' generations who have asked for a raise in the last 2 years. So millennials are really stepping up. They are not afraid to go up to their boss and say, hey, I would like a raise, and I think I deserve a raise. Here is why. And believe it or not, 80% of millennials who asked for a raise in the last 2 years actually got it. So millennials aren't afraid to ask for a raise. They're not afraid to argue for themselves. They're not afraid to advocate, and they get what they want. So if you are a millennial and you're not asking for a raise at your job and you've been there for a significant amount of time, you're doing good work, you got to do it, because there's an 80% of millennials in the last 2 years who asked for a raise got it. So you got a pretty good chance of getting it if that's something that you deserve. And millennials know, they know that the labor market is tight right now and that their jobs are pretty secure. So they're not afraid to go out and ask for what they want and to advocate for themselves and to be bold. All right, number 4, the fourth unorthodox or novel method that millennials are using to make more money is to take on side hustles. All right, so just for some context here on how relatively new the idea of a side hustle is. When I asked my grandpa if he had ever had a side hustle, his response was that no, he had always been faithful to his wife. So among older generations, the idea of a side hustle, even the term, is just not something they're familiar with, and much less actually taking one on in practice. So the idea of participating in the gig economy and diversifying your income, it's not something that's been around forever. And just to give you some idea of how involved in the gig economy millennials are, 1 in 4 millennials expects to have 8 or more jobs throughout their working career. Like 8 or more jobs. This is unheard of. Like our parents and our grandparents, they were thinking, like my grandpa, he has had like 2 careers. One and a half careers throughout his entire life. And my parents' career path has been very similar. But millennials these days are thinking ahead. They're not getting very attached to a certain employer, and they're very willing to go where the money is or where something that they will enjoy more is. And this makes sense because 1 in 4 millennials have also actually been laid off. So millennials want that safety net of a diversified income, and they're no longer attached to a certain employer. So by diversifying these income streams, they ensure that their income is going to be constantly coming in and that all of their eggs are not in one basket. So I know personally my income does come pretty primarily from my primary part-time job, but I also do have a bunch of side hustles going on, which I can take on whenever I want some extra income and have some extra time to spend. So I think it's a very, very valuable thing to have this freedom to diversify your income and not to have all your eggs in one basket, because it has never been riskier to only have one stream of income today when there are so many different streams of income available to you and so many different factors at play in the economy that could lead to you losing this one stream of income. Now, the 5th thing that millennials got working for them is that they're looking to create global change. Now, if they can take this beyond social media activism, because many millennials do get caught up in these bold Facebook statuses and sharing these articles, but forget to actually take action to make a change, when you get past that, some millennials have actually created huge businesses that not only create global change, but also create a consistent income for themselves and their employees. So just a couple examples of millennials who have really created some bold global change. Brittany Wagner had actually given 4 TEDx speeches and developed a computer that detects leukemia by the age of 19 years old. Another example is the brand Ivory Ella. They actually make elephant apparel and donate 10% of their profits to save elephants, and this company is founded and run entirely by millennials. And there's so many millennials focusing on a global scale, but on a much smaller radar, that I could honestly give examples all day of millennials making global change. Now, the 6th habit is nothing really novel, but millennials are really taking it to another level, and that is having investing and saving goals. So again, it's not as bizarre, but millennials are really taking this a step further. So in the last 2 generations, in our parents and our grandparents' generation, there were about 42% of people who had savings and investing goals. Now, in our generation, we bring that up to a 57%. So that's a huge increase from the last 2 generations to our generation. And it is working because over 2/3 of millennials are sticking to these goals, and the results actually show. So in the last 3 years, there's actually been a 50% growth in millennials with over $15,000 in their savings account. And in the last 2 years, there's also been a 100%, that's right, 100% growth in those with over $100,000 in their savings accounts that are millennials. So the amount of millennials with over 6 figures in a savings account has doubled in the last 3 years alone, just because of these 6 habits and because millennials are sticking to their savings and investing goals. Now, my main takeaway from this is that even though the national savings rate in the US is abysmal, it's sitting at about 4%, millennials are still able to create huge wealth for themselves using these 6 somewhat unorthodox and novel methods. So if you guys did enjoy this video, if you got some value from it, if you learned something new, be sure to share this video with a friend who you think could also benefit from it. My name is Apple Crider. I make daily financial and entrepreneurial YouTube videos here on YouTube. I will see you guys tomorrow, and until next time.